Welcome to the Curated Beauty Podcast. Jessica Christie here, a health and beauty enthusiast who became a medical practitioner to be the authority on how to enhance both your outer beauty and inner beauty for the most confident glow. Founding and owning a multi-million-dollar aesthetic medical practice in Michigan, my mission is to bring all the bi-coastal innovations to the fresh coast of Michigan. From which aesthetic treatment gives you the most bang for your buck to how to create systems to be both professionally fulfilled and still have freedom of time and relationships, we will be diving into it all. Welcome to the Curated Beauty Podcast. Today I have the most special guest to me personally and professionally. I have Miss Kaeli Lindholm with me, who is the founder and CEO of KLC Consulting and the Pop Leadership Academy. I met Kaeli first because I went to an aesthetic conference, passionate about education, and I had signed up for a boot camp for women in business. I had no idea what I was walking into, but man, everything that she said resonated to my core, things I needed to hear. I just felt like she was speaking to only me, even though there was a crowd full of women that all equally needed to hear what she had to say. So I really want to dive in today to talk about how Kaeli is disrupting the entire aesthetic industry in the best way and helping women in aesthetics and wellness and really helping them not only set up their business, but impact and focus on all the right things and really look at what success looks like through that whole experience. So without any further ado, I would like to maybe also mention that I was first on her podcast, which is uber successful. It's the Fierce Factor podcast. So now I get to have this superstar podcaster on my podcast. And welcome, Kaeli. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Jessica, for having me. This is such an exciting moment being here. I remember you talking about the Curated Beauty Podcast as a mere figment of your imagination. And now it is in itself disrupting the aesthetic industry. So I could not be more proud and honored to be a guest here with you today. So thank you.
Thank you. I remember before we really got going into our relationship, working at such a high touch level, I would, after we met, pull up your podcast. And I love how you consistently launch a new one every Monday, which you're always goals for me when I'm behind in my podcast, Dropbox. I'm like, Kaeli's every Monday. I really need to commit to that because I really would look forward to popping that on as I got ready and started my week off right. It just really set my mindset for the right pace in which I needed it to be. And I wanted to know a little bit about how you recognized such a niche for women that maybe started these aesthetic businesses and really needed you, a Kaeli, in their lives.
Oh, yeah. A lot of times we do things, it's funny when you talk about preparing a podcast every single week. That was a big goal of mine to just put the work in to have something meaningful to say every single week. And I find a lot of times I'm giving myself therapy through my podcast. I think it's interesting. When I probably started working with women in our space, I myself felt like, well, there's nobody to support me through this process of scaling my business in a way that really understands our industry. I think our industry is just very nuanced. It's growing at a ridiculous pace. It's outpacing other industries. Now couple that with the $1.4 billion wellness industry, where now we're seeing aesthetics and wellness intersect. There's just so much opportunity, hence why we are seeing every investor and their mother trying to get in here now,
Yes.
And it's interesting because having come from a background of working on the manufacturer side in our industry, over the past 15 years, I've seen more and more women shake things up in some really meaningful ways. Women are doing some incredible things in our industry, in fact, driving the growth of our industry at this point. And yet there's still, we as, a cohort are somewhat misunderstood, misunderrepresented. I think under-researched. I had someone reach out to me and say, do you know how many women, what percentage of revenue comes from women-led businesses in our industry? And I said, I actually don't have that data because we don't measure, while we measure a lot of things, that's not something that traditionally has been measured. And I thought, that's a problem, And so, yeah. And so I think it's just sort of, if you look at that coupled with the way that There's role differentiation. Just the way that women show up in the world today is very different than it used to be, I would say, even 1 or 2 decades ago, right? I mean, think of how different we are than our own mothers. And I felt like the only way I could be viable in business is listening to that dude in the stuffy suit, like telling me exactly how I need my numbers to grow. And I have a business degree, and I'm going to tell you that I just felt like what I need is someone who can understand how I show up as a mom in my life and how success is not necessarily entirely measured for me based on the revenue that I drive in my business. I want to create more impact. I want to build meaningful relationships, and I want to feel deeply satisfied by the work that I do, whether that number is 1 million or 10 million. And so I think that our industry, while we have service providers like yourself, Jessica, right, who are building multi-million-dollar empires, you didn't set out on your journey to do that. That's become a byproduct of it. And so that's sort of where I have found a really fulfilling space for myself in terms of working with women who are like, I want to do something important and I don't want it to be all about the numbers.
I love that. You're so right. And I think the crazy thing is women in the aesthetics industry in particular, I don't think that they ever mean to be so successful. But because we're coupled with the way that the complexity of the creativity and the way that women in particular do things, the excitement around something that resonates so clearly with us, like who doesn't want to look better and feel better and be able to put your best foot forward and feel more confident. And then also the crazy growth in the industry itself, when you put all those things together and you think, okay, like I'm a great injector, I'm going to go do this on my own. Well, then you trip into this success. And then I personally did not have the system set up to be able to not only grow, but then also scale. And for me, I had really almost handcuffed myself to my business and created something that I still enjoyed it, but I could foresee myself becoming resentful or bitter or thinking, gosh, this isn't fun. And then like, here, private equity firm, have it, like, go for it.
Right.
And so in walks you, and you started using words like disruptive philosophy and really making sure that people knew who they are and their core values and their mission. And like, I hadn't really asked myself that. You can write these little business plans and Google things that you think should be there. But really, like, I love how you talk about even core values. Like, they're just who you are. You can't change them. And so then marketing to those right clients and spending your time on higher leverage deals. But like going back to the disruptive philosophy thing, even has like led me on this journey where I've pulled my kids out of school. Like, I want them to be disruptive and think more. I want them to think differently. And I've had to pull identities off of me that were given to me by potentially like the men in the stuffy business suit or like my own school and education system. How did you come up with, because I think at first when you hear disruptive, maybe that's such a negative connotation term, but when you really break it down, that is something that really is the differentiating factor with the practices that are innovating. How did you come up with that concept? And then how do you encourage people? Like, what are the key factors in like how to be disruptive in the philosophy?
Yeah. Well, you say it yourself, right? When it comes to the clinical side, disruptive is really positive. It's like, wow, we're thinking of new applications for some of the same technologies or services. We're thinking of new approaches. We're thinking of a new angle, and that's celebrated and endorsed, and millions of dollars in R&D are put into that. And yet on the business side, it's like, oh, but you're going to disrupt that. And I think that's sort of the point. And for me, it's not about I'm setting out to disrupt. It's that I already feel like something is missing, right? It's like, I can say anyone who's listening to us talk right now, that's like, I want to disrupt the status quo. You know who you are. Yes. Because you're already there's just this thing, it's almost intangible. It's just this gut feeling and this instinct that things could be done differently. I want to show up differently. I want to talk about different things. I know for us in our academy, and Jessica, having someone like you as well in our community, is I don't want to just talk about like frilly little things like girl stuff, like I want to have like sophisticated conversations with women who are building empires, and that's okay. And doing it in a unique and special way. And so the word disruptive to me is I'm an out of the box thinker. I've recognized there are gaps. I want to step in and address those gaps. We have clients that are working to pass legislation. They're creating completely new ways of living to impact people in the world. And so it's a weird thing. It's like, I know I want to be disruptive. You just sort of have it in you.
Yes.
You know, that feeling.
I couldn't agree with that more. And I even think about, in school, we're all told like, this is how you do this. And like, this is the only path. And so it's really helped me to just really mentally step out of how can we critically think on those gaps and how can we fill them in a really authentic way, and that we don't need to be jacks of all trades, like that we can really hone in on what we really love and our unique abilities. And I just have really appreciated a lot of the guided work and direction that I've gotten through not only the Confidence to Scale bootcamp that I did first, which for anyone who doesn't know, that was, I can't remember now, but I think it was a 6-week program.
Yeah, 6 weeks.
6 weeks. And, first of all, you offer so much amazing information on your podcast for free. I thought that the Confidence to Scale was so reasonable. Like, it just made it easy to be able to do it. And then it led us to working one-on-one. And I look at the women that are in our group, and sometimes someone will say, how did you find out about that? And I was telling them about even like Chat GPT to write an SOP or something like that. I think, how did I first hear about that? Oh my gosh, it was one of our group members talking about this is a great app, or like a breakout session. What apps really affect your business? And it was like Asana. I had never even heard of a task management system. I was just like, keeping my 50 journals that I'm carrying, which ultimately don't serve you. And you ultimately are creating this like business that's just depending on me because I'm unable to scale. And then you don't really own a business. I was back to having a job. So I think that one of my biggest things was, because you trip into this accidental growth, I just feel like I thought I was unique, that was my situation. But I feel like you probably see this with a lot of your clients. And so within this pool of people that you work with, what do you look for? And I think you called it out, like, if you're this person or not, but what do you look for in someone that you kind of want to work with? And who do you think is ready to take the plunge in terms of diving back in and looking at all these things that set you up to scale?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for that. I think I really want to attract and work with, and what we are looking for are the women who want to have rich conversations and who understand that it's not really about building a business. It's about transforming into someone who is capable of leading that business to the next level. And when you talk about this accidental growth and your journals and all these things and the tactics that have to get put into play, if you weren't willing to learn how to adopt new ways of thinking and new methodologies, you would stagnate regardless of the tactic that you used. Regardless of the project management tool, regardless of the way you chose to organize your time. And it ultimately comes down to, for me, one inflection point where I see a fundamental misunderstanding between the difference of growth and scale. And growth is essentially you continue to push and grow. We understand what growth is. Most providers, and I would say in any service-based business and industry, understands that growth has to do with doing more, putting in more time, more hustle, right? That brings certainly potentially more revenue. That also brings more complexity. It brings more systems that need to get put into place. It requires more of your time. You got to just continue to put in hours to work. And it brings a lot more stress and headaches. So I joke that, like, okay, pick your poison. Do you want to go to lunch with your girlfriend, or do you want to make $10,000 today? Right. Yeah. And for me, that was a gap. I'm like, why does it have to be one or the other? Why can't I make $10,000 and go to lunch with my girlfriend? And ultimately, the point is that until you put yourself in a position to understand how to scale through team and through assets and through generating revenue in other ways that don't just require your hands on your patients, that isn't an option for you. You can't live essentially that sort of version of anything is possible from a success standpoint for you. And so what we hope to help female leaders understand is it's really about who you're becoming to lead a company that can become self-led. So insert the ability to be a great leader of your people, of implementing the systems, of the boundaries that you set in place, of all of the things that make up your entire ecosystem so that you can generate revenue without it requiring more of just your hands-on patience, and you're requiring more time of you essentially taking away from the things that you do love, which is why we all start our business anyway, right? It's for the economy. And then we're like, I don't want to answer to anybody. And then you become a business owner and like everybody's your boss all of a sudden, right? Like you're just
everyone. Yes. It happens time and time again. Like you would think that there would be, I don't know, you would think that, I mean, that's why business coaching is becoming like almost a necessity, because especially in medicine, we are not taught any of this. And I was sharing with you right before we got on this call, I have someone here shadowing me today from Florida, and I was talking to her about a lot of things that I've learned through the hard way. And so of course, there's such value in that. Like I live and breathe it now. I'm passionate about it. I want to share it with people. I want to enrich our industry and give back because I'm so grateful that my business now gets to take the trajectory up. But she was saying that she already has a lot of KPIs in place and SOPs and the way that she's trying to hire people. And I was like, oh my gosh, you have it down. Like you're probably the most unique new medical aesthetic practice that I've seen. But the reality is that so much of us don't have any of this in place, and we just kind of like get going. And then we have to start wearing all these other hats. And then it takes away from like us doing what we even started the business to do. For me, it was so hard to step away from being an injector. Like I've cut down my time massively that I'm technically doing the skill because I have a desire for that entrepreneurship. I think it's really hard for people to say, I'm not going to be the one providing the service, because essentially you're providing a service at a high margin with a low cost because you own the business. And so this year I like called my shot, like Babe Ruth. I'm going to scale. I'm not going to grow. And that has, there's some anxieties met along the way when you actually do see that you're not growing for the first time. You're maintaining, but you're really taking the step back to put all these things into place and invest in yourself. And so when I look at what are the steps, that was like a step for me in terms of saying that I'm going to scale. But what are the main steps that you want someone to work on when they take that first step of the intention of scaling rather than just growing and grinding?
Yeah, that's so profound. I think that in the beginning, right, sometimes you got to just hustle, and like, it's just like roll up your sleeves and get dirty and go do the thing. And I would say the problem is less about, do I have the KPI in place and do I have like the SOPs and all of that, right? Like you can't write an SOP for a system you haven't developed. So I think that there's a period of time. So give yourself some grace on that, right? But there is a period of time in which you have to figure out what you want. So for me, it's about getting that clarity. That's what we do in CTS. I think that's why you enjoyed going through that process as sort of a reset for you in your business, where you already had a successful business, but then it's not linear. It's not like, oh, my business is successful now. No, you essentially start over. There are seasons in your business, and you're constantly getting to a place where like you've maxed out success at that level, and it's time to level up again, and you become a newbie again. And I think like, first of all, having a conversation and knowing that that's okay. Like that's what it's going to take. That's what this whole lifestyle of entrepreneurship is. And then understanding where business focus should not be. When you get to a certain level, it's not as much about new client acquisition and marketing and branding and showing up on Instagram. And it becomes much more critical. In fact, it's detrimental to the sustainability of your business that you understand who you are as a company and you start to focus on the inside work. And that's not the sexiest stuff, right? Because it's not like, ooh, look at me, I get to say I'm this, or I'm putting a new notch in my belt, or, a new feather in my cap. Like we've had clients that have had to say, you know what, I don't have, for me to build the business that I want this year, I'm going to have to turn down, my AMI opportunity, right? Or I can't be a trainer and traveling and be on the road all of the time right now, because I ultimately want to get to this future goal and I need to focus on building my team. And I need to get the right people in place. And I have to put ruthless determination behind the fact that whoever is going to come into my ecosystem is going to be in alignment with my core values. And again, this goes back to knowing who you are. What are your values? What do you stand for? And I think when you know that, those things fall into place, right? The rest of it's like you find the right people to help you build, you find the right resources, you access the right things, you somehow end up in a workshop that you didn't even know you signed up for. Like, you manifest things where like, how did I end up here? How did I meet that person or bump into someone? And those things come into play because you've already planted that seed of who you are and where you're going. And that thing is sprouting, like that's starting to germinate live.
Yes. That is exactly what I would say. I think that it's that first step of intentional living, and you do have to be so open and aware to what that looks like. One of the huge shifts that I realized this year was I thought that it was all going to be about our patients. I'm campaigning towards this patient that I want in my life. And then what I realized was, no, from you teaching me this, through like honing in on my mission and honing in on my values and what our vision is as a company and our manifesto, my focus is on my team members. And I think that something that we do not appreciate in the very beginning, especially in these medical aesthetic business owners, we don't think about the part of the sacrifice that it takes to walk away from being this person that everyone wants to see because you do their treatment the best. There's maybe some ego wrapped up in that. And something that I've learned so much is that to be a good leader, even though I'm pretty much the happiest in the room, that is shifting though, I will say. I'm the happiest in the room treating my patient, but it's not about me. It's about building something bigger and being the impact leader to my team members. And then it trickles into our patients. And it's almost like when you think about marriage, like the bond in the relationship between the parents is the most important. And then the kids technically come second. And I think a lot of people don't do that, like that seems crazy. And when push comes to shove and you're busy, like, of course the kids need more. But then if you really like what happens, then that team unravels. And so I've learned that part of scaling for me has been impacting and feeding and building the right team and learning what that looks like and how to do that through your resources and your help. Because then I have these team members that are so bought into the vision that they can go out and shout it off of the mountain louder than I can into more people. And once I realized that was really huge for me. You teach a lot about hiring the right people and how to drive the motivation for those people to become, as you call it, like entrepreneurs in your business. And you're encouraging us as the business leaders to kind of continue to support them in their autonomous growth of their business. Can you talk a little bit about what you've taught me in terms of hiring the right people and like how that, instead of tasks, the whole concept of who that person is?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's everything, right? Because that's when you think about your business growth, your business cannot outgrow you. You will stagnate if you are not personally developing yourself and becoming focused on protecting essentially the mission of the brand and what everybody is what you're in business for and out to accomplish. And when it comes to your people, the goal is to build a self-led company, right? At the end of the day, the goal is that it doesn't rely on me. I am not the company. I'm building a company that has its own heartbeat and its own soul, and it has a team of intrapreneurs who see themselves as essentially running their own business within my business. And what I mean by that is that you can't motivate somebody necessarily. They're either motivated human or not. Like they either have passion and they want to get up every day and work to be challenged. And when we talk about A players, great people want to grow. And so it's incumbent upon us to grow as individuals, as leaders in our business, and to continue to grow the business in alignment with our people. And I think one piece to that, like the tactical piece to that to me is really what you're doing, Jessica. I'm helping my team members see and understand and get clarity around what their own mission is in the world. What are they looking to accomplish? And then how can beauty culture be the vehicle or the vessel for them to achieve their own goals? We're all here for a bigger reason than just for beauty culture to make money, just for Jessica to get a Ferrari, right? Like, and that's sort of the point, is that hiring people that are going to ultimately drive the growth for your company is about, as a leader, understanding what's the point for them and helping them align with our company and accomplishing our vision for their own reasons. So it's a little bit of psychology in a way, right? It's like, it's more about, why are you getting up every day? And I feel like too many times, this is one of the big challenges I see in our industry. People are way overpaying employees because they're afraid they'll go work for someone else, because they assume that everyone's just in it for a paycheck. But I think we need to give people a little more credit than that. Because are you just here for a paycheck?
No.
I mean, the reality is the most successful people I know in the world aren't just showing up for the money. Has a meaning, right? And it's about impact. It's about having a purpose. It's about the relationships. It's about so many other things that contribute to success for the individual. And the sooner we start to understand that as employers, the sooner we'll start to align ourselves with team members who are in simpatico with our core values. And that's the point. If you have somebody who is like, I don't care how good they are, how much money they're making, if they're complete drama, they're toxic, they're unethical, or they have a complete different track than you, it's not going to work. In fact, that person could take down your whole company at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that resonates with me, what you just said. I mean, I think about where, first of all, even like the confidence to scale sections, all the things, they really, really go together so well, and they melt into creating this new mindset, essentially. And you and I talk about mindset a lot together. And when I think back to where I met you and what I was going through my first big growing pain. And I had to, because I found out that there were some team members that were planning on leaving me, I was like, oh my gosh, why would you want to leave? Like, I'm literally paying you so much money. I'm like, just hands off. And I have moved on from that person who was feeling the scarcity mindset to now feeling this abundance, where I believe now that I'm building my business and beauty culture as its own heartbeat through the things that I've learned with you, that now I should be able to have my business set up in a way that I can celebrate any life changes. I could have my top producing employee come to me and say, I really want to be an entrepreneur too. And I'm going to put up shop, like I'm going to set up shop like 10 miles down the road or 5 miles down the road. And like, I really truly believe that now I'm in a place that I can celebrate that and be like, let's throw you a party. I'm here for you. Because when you really look at how all those things go together and you really put your money where your mouth is, you're really intentional and you believe and you're bought into the business as well and the mission and vision of it as well, you do have that abundance mindset, and you don't think about just money. And I remember sharing with you when I was on your podcast, I was like, I don't look at my daily revenue. And of course, I need to, as the CEO of my business, check in with QuickBooks and make sure that we're looking at those sorts of KPIs and stuff. But does it really, really matter on a daily basis to just look at numbers? No, because I do believe that there's a bigger mission and vision there, and that success always follows. And I really can't believe the drastic mindset from what was that? Like, I signed up with you at this high technical level in October. I mean, that's so fast. And my business is forever changed. And I'm forever changed because of, I think I've really stepped into actually being an entrepreneur instead of the owner of beauty culture. And so I'm just so grateful. I don't want everyone to call you because I still need to like have access to you, But I mean, I just feel like I really wanted you to be on here because it's just such a massive calling to people in this industry that are feeling those growing pains and knowing that there's just this massive resource right in front of them. Like when I wanted to open a podcast, you're like, oh, that's easy. Literally, this is what you did. You're like, oh, that's easy. Perfect. Here's the resource. And you sent me over a resource that you already have. And that's something super unique about you and your team. Your entire team is so great. Everything is a library of resources and playbooks and real stuff. It's not just giving you 75% of the ingredients. It's like, I'm an open book, go. So I really, really appreciate that. And I guess I would wonder I have two questions. They're kind of putting you on the spot a little. So if you could tell me, I know you gave me a book for my birthday, but if you could tell me what would be like the book that you read that gave you almost like an entrepreneurial seizure and changed your whole mindset. And then what would be next steps for KLC Consulting? And if you wanted to share, what are the things that are in process for you to kind of launch next and expand upon?
Yeah, thanks. And I just want to touch on to what you were saying before, sort of about your experience and how you feel like you've grown so quickly, just having made that mindset shift. And I think this industry is lucky to have you, Jessica, because I think people are like having a heart attack as you're talking about, that's okay if your employee wants to become an entrepreneur and leave you and open up shop 5 minutes down the road.
Crazy.
Right. Like, okay, next. But look, don't we all desire to have that level of confidence and open-mindedness and abundant outlook about what we're building in the world and how we could be so uninhibited if we weren't being held back or tied back by these thoughts? Mm-hmm. And one thing I think if anybody's listening to this and they're like, well, I built this great business, but everything is on my shoulders, right? And yet I'm a visionary, I'm an elite visionary, and I have this I have this dream of what I want to continue to build and grow, but I'm dragging my business behind me, right? It's like, come on, like, can't we catch up, right? It's probably a good indication that it's time to slow down and really think and put these things in place. You're at that stage where it's time to hit the reset button again and almost start over a little bit, and it is that easy. It's just getting resourced and getting the help you need and putting in those sort of polishing up and micro pivots. And a lot of it's just that emotional energy we have behind who we have been in our business. And this is our baby, right? And like, I'm not going to just hand that off to somebody to be like, okay, here you go, take that, so that I think is a good segue into your question about a book. I read a lot and there has not been one book that's the book. I think that, and I've reread books, right? So I think going through resources as we need them at the time we need them, and then revisiting them as we shift and develop into like that sort of next person or that next identity, as we'll say, right? One book I've read multiple times that has, as I've advanced, had more meaning for me from a concept theory or philosophy is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And I think we've talked about that book as well. And essentially what that for me brought to light was that we all have an upper limit where it's sort of that kind of where that conversation about imposter syndrome comes in. Yeah. When you start to experience this level of success and then you feel like the turbulence, like even as an example, maybe hiring an employee that's like too good for you, right? Yeah. Like, oh, I don't deserve that. Like, and we start questioning, we're like, oh, but they're what, and we'll hold ourselves back because we hit the ceiling, we hit this upper limit. And that is where this work really comes in, is this mindset shift around, I'm not just waiting for the next shoe to drop. I'm not expecting to go ahead and fail. I'm expecting, anticipating, and I believe in wherever it is I want to take my business and whatever I want to have in my life, it's fully possible for me, right? We joke about like, oh, private jet or this or that, like awesome. Like those things, somebody has to do it. It's absolutely humanly possible. It's just a matter of sticking the course and not letting the external influences get in the way. So that's been a really powerful book. And then what was your next question? So
like if you wanted to share, which you don't have to, but like what's the next steps for KLC Consulting? And like other than being an amazing one-on-one coach and having different tiers that are feasible to different budgets, what would be the next step? Like where are you going to blow the doors off of the next big thing for your company?
Yeah, I'm going to just really be boring right now because I believe I continue to bring in team members. So it's for me just going deeper and getting coached myself, developing myself, understanding and learning more about who I am and what it's going to take for me to be a great leader, and then continuing to bring in the best absolute people possible to service the clients that we have. And I honestly believe that if we just get better and better and better, then the demand to get bigger will be there. So I know that it's kind of boring, but like honest to God,
no, I love it.
So internally focused, and all of our growth, we've been called to grow. And we just, for example, launched a practice management fast track course for practice managers in aesthetics, which was a really like just beyond asked for. And as we're starting to develop leaders to understand sort of those fundamental frameworks that we cover in the academy, the next step was, well, I want to level up and work on my leadership and mindset. And I want you guys to help me teach my team these things so that they can go in and deploy these. We're all on the same page, but they're someone that I can start to trust, right? On the business side, I can start to kind of loosen that rope a little bit. So they're supporting me in a way where I can really get away, but I trust them to be taking care of the business without me having to be in there micromanaging everything. So those types of things, there's other verticals that we're going to be going into, but at this point, it's just to continue to deep dive and really stand shoulder to shoulder with women like yourself, Jessica, who are making big impact and big influence in our industry. And then we're just going to sort of see where we all go together.
I love that.
Yeah.
It makes me so happy because I don't want anything to change in this sector right now. I just want all the evolution of the growth with the people on our team. Like we obviously do group sessions and we welcome new members here and there. And it's always so amazing but I honestly haven't hit that upper limit with growth there. And I feel like that it's music to my ears selfishly because I just want to keep everything the same because I just experienced such massive benefits. But if someone else wanted to find out what would be the next step to connect with you, whether it be through the Confidence to Scale or if you're going to be at any local meetings or even just the podcast, where would they come to find you?
Yeah. So the Fierce Factor podcast every Monday morning, that's the first place to start for sure. If you are a listener and you're looking for like, okay, I'm now ready to kind of hit like, okay, I'm ready to take that leap. By the way, I will say growth sometimes is just about making a decision and an investment in yourself. And I think like just to say, okay, I'm going to take 6 weeks and focus on this sort of idea of developing the blueprint for my next level of growth, klcconsultants.com/scale is the URL. You can also follow me on Instagram, Kaeli.Lindholm, and we'll be in the DMs and stuff there too. But I'll be at Aesthetic Next. I'm trying to think of where your audience will be too. I'll be doing a workshop there and a talk. So yeah, I mean.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to be there too, I hope. And so maybe we have to like meet up and have this 1-year anniversary of this incredible relationship that just shifted and changed and pivoted my life so much.
Every reason to celebrate.
Oh my gosh, we will pop a bottle for that. I'm so excited and I'm so grateful for the time that you took to explain all of this and to give everyone else a glimpse of the massive mindset shift that you've taken me, this journey that you've taken me on. So I am grateful. I'm sure you have to jump on another 1-to-1 or something crazy and important, but thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I will definitely link everything in the show notes for you guys to follow up and be able to get in touch with Kaeli and her team. Thank you, Kaeli.
Thanks so much, Jess. Bye.
Congratulations, you have done it. You've reached the end of an episode on the Curated Beauty Podcast and have enriched a part of your self-care by discovering something new. I hope this time together added a little perspective to your day and will ultimately boost your confidence and give you the strength to do all the hard things. As we walk through this journey together, follow our Curated Beauty Podcast. And if this resonated with you, share it with a friend, save the episode, and also follow our social media platforms in the show notes. We love to engage with our listeners on all levels.